Hey, it's Aaron. Today I want to talk about the 2025 Toyota 4Runner. So the 4Runner is completely redesigned for 2025. It's a brand new SUV. This is the, what are we on now? 6th generation of the 4Runner. So the biggest change that most people are going to know outside of the bodywork, so it looks completely different. The biggest change that most people are going to notice is no more 6-cylinder engine. The 4Runner is now a turbocharged 4, period. So I was worried about that because in the past, vehicles that have made that switch have become either almost undrivable or just terrible across the board. Loud engine, don't take off the way you want them to, all those things. Not the case here, so that's good. Toyota has finally kind of figured out what to do with their turbo 4s. Toyota was only marginally good at turbocharging to begin with, so that was a long learn for them. They really had to put in some effort to learn how to work with turbocharged engines, and it's paid off. Most of their vehicles now are turbocharged, and almost all of them are some kind of hybrid by default. So with the 4Runner, there are a handful of powertrain options. So to start with, the default is turbocharged 4, 8-speed automatic. That's the default setup. It's a pretty good setup. It's a 2.4 liter engine, 278 horsepower. The 8-speed automatic does a pretty okay job of mitigating that turbo lag, that time between when you push the pedal and the turbos kick in, so that you get minimal power out of the engine. It does a pretty good job of mitigating that. But you will notice it if you try to tow anything, and you will 100% notice it if you're off-roading. So, 2 scenarios where this base engine may not be your best option. If you upgrade to the iForce Max, which is standard on the Platinum, TRD Pro, and Trailhunter models of the 4Runner. So I have driven the TRD Pro and the Limited, so I've tried both engines. The iForce Max is a kind of a mild hybrid system, which does a lot to mitigate that turbo lag. And I highly recommend going to that if you can afford that or get to that vehicle. Because with the iForce Max, you get a little better fuel economy, but you get way better power handling. Now, it's not necessarily more power output. It is higher in horsepower and all of that. But that's not what's important. What's really important is that the power is in a more predictable curve. It doesn't go up and over like this, so it's not like the turbo where it takes a minute to ramp up and then has it. It just curves it up. Like the V6, which was one of the biggest reasons and greatest reasons that the V6 lasted for so long in so many vehicles. Because a 6-cylinder engine, a V or straight, just has a very predictable power curve. And so it's really easy to understand and drive. It's intuitive. Whereas a turbo like this, there's a lot of not much power and then a sudden jump in power when you finally hit the RPM level where the turbo kicks in. So not so much that's one of the great things about a hybrid setup is that you can use the electrics to get rid of that long wait for that turbo to kick in. And that's a big deal, and it works really well in a 4Runner. Now, the 4Runner still has some downsides. It's still basically truck-based. So it still feels like a truck. So it doesn't maneuver very well compared to like a crossover of the same, so a unibody vehicle of the same size. It doesn't do that. It could be more fuel efficient if it wasn't truck-based. So fuel efficiency is an issue. Getting in and out of it can be a problem because it sits pretty high. The bodywork is above the frame and not part of the frame, so you end up having to climb up and over. All those things have been problems for the 4Runner from the beginning, but going by sales, they haven't been deal breakers for a whole lot of people. So I assume they're still not going to be. Price tag on this is pretty decent. So to get into the base model, you're going to spend about $43,000, give or take. To get into the off-road model, the TRD off-road is the first of those, really. You're going to spend a little over $51,000. And to get into the serious ones, so the upper end. So this Limited that I drove was roughly 60. You can start at a little less than that, at about 57.4 or 5, somewhere in there. And it was very, very nice, but other than having 4x4, it really didn't have anything going for it. It's like the 4Runner Limited has been throughout its life. It's the I want a 4Runner, but I don't want any of the benefits of a 4Runner. There's no off-road gear, any of that kind of stuff, so you just get a truck with horrible fuel economy and not a whole lot to make up for it. There is a third row in the 4Runner now, but it is basically useless. You're not going to get very much in there. You could maybe get a booster seat, but you will not get a child safety seat in there easily. So don't think of this as a 3-row option for most families. It's a 3-row emergency. So if you have to have a third row for that 5-block drive, okay, it's fine. But if you're going to be going for half an hour, don't get this thinking it's a 3-row. You're way better off spending the same or less money and getting the Highlander next to it on the lot for that, because the Highlander is a far more family-friendly vehicle. So anyway, when you get into the TRD Pro, like I drove it, that's going to start at about 69,000 noise, but the way I drove it, it was more like 73. So there you go, a bunch of options on it. And then the top-end Trail Hunter, same price as the TRD Pro. The only difference is equipment. So with the Trail Hunter, it's slightly different equipment. It's made a little more for, say, forest bouncing and getting around in the wilderness, versus the TRD Pro, which is more of kind of a rocky, sandy, get out there and kind of go fast over the terrain or go over the more varied terrain versus the Trail Hunter. So you're kind of going back and forth. Trail Hunter has a snorkel and a bunch of other stuff. So kind of going between the two, you decide what you're going to use it for. That's the package you would buy for your off-road package. And like I said, they are the same price. So roughly $69,000 moves. So there you go. Anyway, I really like the 4Runner. For me, the 4Runner makes sense in an SR5 base model, because you're probably just going to treat it like a Jeep. You're going to load it up. You're going to buy it with 4x4, and then you're going to take it down the road, and you're going to modify the hell out of it. And now it's an off-road rig. And it makes a lot of sense in the already off-road rig setups. So that's where you're talking about, like, the TRD Off-Road is a pretty okay setup for a starter. That's a good starter kit right there. You get into that one about 51,000. But really, I would be looking at the TRD Pro and the Trail Hunter if you want an off-the-shelf off-road vehicle. Those are kind of your options. The rest of the packages for this, as far as the sports and the premiums and the limited and platinum, I do not understand why they exist or why people buy them. But I'm not the market for this vehicle. Outside of a couple of these off-road variants, I'm not really the person they're trying to sell it to. It's actually my neighbor who owns one, and it looked really carefully at the new one when I had it in both models, and really liked the Limited, and is really considering trading hers in and going up to the new model. So there's a market for everything. You just have to find it and make it, right? So there you go. Anyway, that's the 2025 Toyota 4Runner. Overall, very positive. Like I said, my biggest worry was that the 4-cylinder turbo and no more 6-cylinder was going to kill this, and it didn't. So awesome. That's what I got. This has been Aaron. Talk to you again soon.